Welcome to Fighting for Light, the podcast dedicated to living a life of integrity, aligning mindset with purpose, and shifting from depletion to contribution. Each episode features thoughtful conversation on mindset, leadership, and self-image, helping you grow personally and serve others more effectively. Fighting for Light is about seeking truth, beauty, and goodness in a world that often feels chaotic and dark. Let's fight for light. Hello, and welcome to Fighting for Light. Very excited to have you here. This episode, we're going to talk about productivity, or what does it mean to be productive? And sometimes I struggle with this because it's easy to claim productivity as success. And when we end a day or a week and we don't feel like we've been productive, sometimes we don't feel like we're good enough, or we feel like we have failed in some standard that's set by who knows who. And today I want to talk about the 80-20 rule. And the 80-20 rule is the idea that 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. However, what happens often is that those percentages sway or they become distorted. And I know for myself, I can fall into procrastination because I struggle to figure out how to switch from the beginning or the research phase to the output or productive phase. So I want to talk about that a little bit. I think for myself, one of the things that I discovered, I did a Strengths Finder test. And if you've heard of Strengths Finder, it's so helpful. And I suggest doing it. I'll link it in the show notes. But my top strength was actually called input. And what does that mean? That means that I am really good at the research phase. I'm really good at finding all the details. I'm really good at talking to people about what should be done. I'm really good at making lists of what should be done. And basically the input. I love to study. I love to read. I love to learn. But what happens is over time, to me, that feels like I'm accomplishing the task when in reality, I am not actually being productive. So let me give an example. Right now, in the world of the Pregnancy Help Center that I'm in, we are actually starting to make the switch into offering some more medical services. And we are making those changes. However, I can easily get stuck in just wanting to learn, to research, to understand what it means to be a clinic, to find all the details about all the legalities. And what happens is I get stuck in the research phase and I'm just pouring and pouring and pouring into myself, but I'm never transitioning to a point where I'm enacting those things. So I'm never making the policies and procedures that need to be made. I'm not doing the outreach to the people that need to be reached out to. I need to constantly be telling myself, switch from input to output. And so I've told myself now I'm in a season of output. So that's what we're doing. On the downside, one of the faults of input can actually become hoarding. And I wouldn't say I'm a hoarder, but it's easy for me to feel like the materials that I get or gain can be productive or can be an asset to me later. And so I hold on to all of the materials. If you like to do crafts, you might fall into this. I do. I love to crochet. I have an abundance of yarn and I laugh about it because I'm not in a season of having time to crochet, but I might at some point. So I have to hold on to the resources that I have. I have to keep the input because the input or the material that I've used in the input is the tool. And so what do I need to do? At this stage, what needs to happen, and I suggest this for all of you, you've heard this before, find your 3 top tasks that need to be accomplished. So take everything that you've input, take all of the material that you've gained and all of what feels like need to happen and make a big, big list. I actually call this the teapot. And that might sound silly, but it's the things that are in the teapot that if it gets too full, it's going to start whistling. It's going to start, the steam's going to start opening the valve and it's just going to whistle at me. And so I put it all in the teapot and then I go through the list and I just mark down with a little asterisk what are the things that need to be done today? A lot of times there's more than three, but the goal is to have three that you can accomplish in this day that will move the needle forward. And so that's step one. Take those three items and then set some boundaries on that. The other one is definitely from the women's school. I get this a lot, but take massive action and just start. Just start doing it. I'll use this podcast as an example. I very much exist in a sphere of, I call it the sphere of fear, of not taking the next step where I'm afraid of what's going to happen. I'm afraid of failing, but I'm also afraid of succeeding. What does it mean if I am accomplishing these great things? Are people going to have more expectations of me? Are they going to assume that I know things that I don't know? And I like to have those fears hinder me. And I say like to on purpose because sometimes fear becomes a safety net and we like to use it as an excuse. That's not healthy and it needs to be overcome. So take massive action just means do it scared. And so you have your three items and then you are taking massive action. So you're taking the next step. You're just making the phone calls that need to be made. You are writing the policies that need to be written, and you're taking that next step. The third one is to work smarter, not harder. This is something my husband says to my kids all the time, and it's now my motto: work smarter, not harder. One of the things that I'm doing, actually, I'm trying to transition in the work world. We could talk a little bit more about personal home life, but in my job here as a CEO, I'm trying to transition from paper to an iPad, actually. And that sounds maybe like harder for some people. Digital can be really intimidating. But for me, if you could see my desk, it is a lot of little piles of things. And what happens is that those piles of work become clutter in my brain. And so I'm trying to transition to using digital tools more often so that the external clutter is limited so that I feel more clear and able to progress on the tasks that I'm working on. A good example of this maybe at home too is I am starting with cooking. So I'm not starting cooking. I know how to cook, but I'm starting with some of the meals. I'm starting to try to think about work smarter, not harder. I like to cook. And a lot of times when I choose a meal for my family, I am thinking of myself and what I would love to eat and flavors and, something that's a little more exciting. And I end up cooking for a lot longer than I want to be cooking. Dinner usually is late then, or I don't have all the ingredients. And so in this season of life where my children are little, I'm starting to make choices of meals that are easier. So I made shepherd's pie yesterday. Yes, my children complained about it the entire time. That's fine. That's their own deal. Was it easy for me? Yes. It was like 5 ingredients and it was one pot and it was easy to accomplish. I use that as an example because sometimes when we have these items on our plate, as well as the other tasks that need to get accomplished, we can often feel like maybe the meal planning is the input and the cooking of dinner is the output. If we spend all of our time looking for recipes and getting the ingredients, but we never switch to making the meal for our family, then we're stuck in input mode. At the end of the day, 80% should be output and 20% should be input. I think it's important for us to take a look at our lives, our day, the preparation that we're taking. The other one is I'm now a mindset coach, and I have been over the last year going through the certification. I'm certified now. But one of the things that's often said is kind of the take massive action mentality is just do it. Just start coaching. And it's easy for us to want to set up everything, to set up our web page, to figure out what payment processor we're going to use, what schedule we're going to have, how we're going to, interact with people, or how we're going to find clients. And if we spend all of our time on that side of the conversation, we'll never get to a point where we're actually coaching. And for myself, I love people. I love to talk to people. I love to interact with people. And the times that I have been able to sit down and speak with someone one-on-one in a coaching sphere, it is so life-giving to me. So what I need to do is remember those moments and use that memory and that emotion that I have in those times to remind me in the input phase where I'm trying to make so many preparations to be perfect, which is another thing that I need to work on, that I can use that to remind me to switch to output, to almost say, remember that it's more fun on the other side and it's safer over here. But safety isn't always the goal. I share all those things, and I know for yourself, some of that will resonate, and some of you are very good at being productive and just taking massive action, and I commend you. I would love to hear from you. I would love to see your comments. I would love to know how you switch from preparing to get something done to switching to the output, to the productivity side, without it feeling like that is going to determine our worth. For a journal prompt today, I would love for you to take some time to write down the 3 top things that you need to accomplish and what is holding you back from accomplishing them. I would also like to remind you that I have a resolutions workbook, a little mini workbook for you if that's something you're interested in. It's called Reset Resolutions 2025. I know we're in March, but it can be used at any time. You can find that at claraluxcoaching.com/reset. And at claraluxcoaching.com, you can also find more information about working with me, or you can just reach out. I would love to hear from you. I would love to chat with you. And thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you next week.